Hi, Hamish Conway here, and welcome to another episode of TACOS Tuesday. And this is episode number 39. And with me today is Sebastian Hargraves. Welcome, Seb.
Thanks, Hamish. Good to be here. Excited about this one again. Had a good conversation with clients last week in regards to this topic, so be a good one to cover.
Yeah, great. And as you would have seen, the topic of the podcast today is around managing your margins. And obviously, we're all about Amazon ads, which is, we believe, a fundamental way to grow your sales on Amazon. But for many companies, what we see is they often just don't put anywhere near enough budget towards Amazon ads. And that can be for a number of reasons. It can be, it's just how they operate internally, and maybe not treating Amazon as a hybrid, which is in terms of like a wholesale customer, but also direct to consumer. And so they're treating it like a Coles or a Woolies and giving it that much attention, which we believe is a mistake because it is a hybrid. But then there's also another factor that kicks in, and that is with Amazon selling as a vendor. And look, if you're not selling as a vendor, I think you'll find this interesting anyway, in case you do head that way at some point. But selling as a vendor, you've got Amazon negotiating with you to get as much margin as they possibly can. And they will put all sorts of programs in front of you, all of them that have a price in terms of a percentage point or more on what you against the sales, right? So, and what we noticed last week with some conversations is that these brands are saying yes to a whole lot of Amazon's asks, and that has meant that they've got no room for ads, which is really going to drive sales the most. And it just made us really think, it's like, wow, we can't ignore this. And for many distributors of brands or brands selling as a vendor, this is really important. So we thought we would run through a lot of what the vendor managers will ask, and we'll give you our take on it. Because we get to talk to a lot of vendors, we've got this interesting perspective, and we have these vendor mastermind meetups where we are talking with brands, and brands are amazing in these groups. They share a lot, but also because we look at everyone's margins to help with advertising, because the GP contribution matters, and we know what we can then have as an ACOS target for each SKU. We've got this perspective, so we're going to dive into that. And so, Seb, given that context, what do you notice the most that's hurting brands with their margins?
Yeah, well, I think, you touched on some of it just then, but yeah, it's basically them accepting a lot of these programs or offerings that Amazon have without either fully understanding them or maybe accepting too many of them. And these are cutting into the margins that they would be able to use for advertising. So we've got some of them here to kind of list out and talk about which ones we think are the better ones, as in ones that have the biggest impact for your account, and some of the ones that we think that there's, questionable value on some of those other ones.
Yeah. And so look, people will have some base accruals or co-ops, and they'll look like, they could be called a marketing co-op, and that could be anywhere from 10 to 15% as a core accrual. And then you have damage allowance, often around 2.5%. So Amazon kind of starts with that. And then you get into some of the others like AVS, for example, which is Amazon Vendor Services, which will give you a contact person at Amazon there who is technically there to help you grow your sales, but you're kind of getting a varied skill level here and or competency or ability to get them to really help. And because they're quite busy, they've got a number of things going on. So what do you notice with the AVS? Like, do you think it's a good thing, and what are people paying for it?
Yeah, I think this is one of the ones that you probably do want to be doing. In most cases, depending on how big your catalog is and whatnot. If you've got a small catalog, you can probably get away with not using AVS. But if you've got a really large catalog, there's some things that AVS can do that just you can't get done otherwise. And so having that AVS support is good. The key part there is just making sure that you're negotiating on the percentage, because generally what we've seen is the AVS is a percentage of your overall revenue is the model. So just getting that percentage right. So I think we've seen as low as, and you can correct me, Hamish, if I'm wrong here, but as low as 1.5% and up to 4.5% for some of the brands that we work with.
Yeah, that's where you want to be. Often they'll start at a lot higher, like they'll come in at 6, and the bigger your revenue, the lower that percentage will be. So AVS here, look, if you get a good person, you've just got to squeeze everything you can out of them. Mostly it's around getting your catalog sorted. It can be also to help with inbound freight deliveries there that can come, but also when it comes to price increases, you've got an in as well. In fact, sometimes with price increases, this is a key. This is the first lever Amazon will go to when you come to price increase time. They'll be going, well, what about AVS? If you join AVS, then we'll give these price increases. That'll often be where it's at. But with an AVS manager there, you have to absolutely keep them accountable and not let them off the hook. If they say they're going to do something, you have to follow them up, and you just be right on top of them. So that is a key part there. So it is one you've got to watch, but if you can use it in the right way to get what you need to keep the catalog clean and save money elsewhere through the process, and depending on where you live, you might meet them in person as well, and that can be helpful. And if you go back to the episode I did with Carl Pronti from Combined Group with Scrub Daddy, you'll notice that he brought it up saying it was actually been really useful for them to get a lot of things sorted out with their catalog and also inbound freight. So that's the first one. And then we've got another one here, which is Vine. And this only really kicked in last year, but what are you making of Vine?
Yep. So Vine, for those who don't know, basically you can give away products for reviews, more or less. That's how it kind of works. And so basically you get a guaranteed review. And so if you've got a lot of products or new products coming to market, this is super helpful. Or if you've got a lot of products that have, like, because some products will have shared reviews from, say, maybe your international counterpart. So you might have 10,000 reviews straight out of the gate. You don't really need Vine, obviously, in that case. But if you've got a lot of products, one area where we work with brands that's specifically helpful is if you've got seasonal products. So let's say every season you're releasing new products into season. It means they're always starting with 0 reviews, and you're kind of always trying to get traction into the season. Having something like Vine is super, super critical just to help get things moving. We've talked about this in the past, but advertising is an amplifier, so it'll amplify good and bad. If you don't have reviews, that's kind of amplifying bad because people don't have that trust with the brand. So I think it's definitely worth it if your catalog makes sense to have it, and if you've got a lot of product launches that are either coming up or are always part of your brand.
Yeah, because if they're after a percentage or 0.5%, then it's got to be worth it in the context of what you're doing. And we have seen with some clients, this has been bundled together with bundles. So it might be Vine in bundles for 1%, for example. And so moving on to that, so bundles, what are you noticing in the effectiveness of bundles? Virtual bundles, to be clear.
Yeah, virtual bundles. Yeah, I mean, minimal results I've seen. Maybe you can talk to what you've seen, Hamish. But yeah, I haven't seen these work amazing well. They sound good on paper, but I don't know. They don't seem to translate 100%. There's probably a few exceptions to that, like where there's excellent cohesion between two different products. But as a scalable kind of strategy, I don't know. I haven't seen it gain a whole lot of traction.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, funny, a few of these things here with the vendor, and we'll get to them. As a third-party seller, you don't have to pay for these; they're just there. But this is part of the game. With vendor, they just need to click a button, turn it on, and charge you for it. Then there's another one here: subscribe and save, or SNS. And if you've got a product that is a consumable that lends itself to a subscription approach, then this can be very useful. But you've got to be careful how much you are putting towards this. I mean, we've seen companies that over 50% of their sales are from subscription. So it's really important, really sticky. And then you can, in previous episodes, we've talked about the secret lifetime value number there, that if you know that, then you can spend more to win a new to brand customer, which is really important. So subscribe and save, 10% is, you don't really want to go more than 10%. If it's 15, then it starts to get pretty punchy in terms of eating into your margins. So just be aware of the type of volumes you think that could happen through being on subscribe and save. And that will be something to, perhaps check with us as well. Just give some benchmarks here of what's possible. So anything else on subscribe and save?
Yeah, I mean, so just to be clear, Hamish is talking about the 10% of the price that when customers sign up, they get 10% discount on it. Yeah, not the full accrual. So, but absolutely critical to have the right products on there. So what we've found is, obviously there's these negotiations with net PPM with Amazon. And if you've got the wrong mix in your subscribe and save, it's hard to then back out of that, right? Because you've got customers who are going to continue on that subscribe and save, and it's hurting your net PPM. And so then your relationship with Amazon's always under tension, and there's not a whole lot that, you can do that then, because you're now in a really hard situation. Whereas if you just spend a bit of time understanding like which products, are you going to, put in that program, that's going to save you a lot of headache down the track for sure.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So then we've got category lists, or, gifting, baby gifts, for example. What about those?
I mean, this one's probably very low on my list. The other ones that we've mentioned before are definitely higher on the list for me. So I haven't seen a big impact, and this one's hard to quantify as well. It's really hard to get any kind of attribution to this one. And this is why we like ads more than these kind of things, because ads at least gives us direct attribution to the sales.
Yeah, and that's something we'll touch on a little bit more as well. So we've got another one here is A+ Premium. So you've got standard A+, but the premium gives you a whole lot more interactive features, and it's a much better customer experience. Now, and this one is interesting in terms of what difference does it actually make to conversion rates. And we've heard anywhere from like a 10% increase, but when I say 10%, from 10 to 11, for example. So it could be this incremental increase, but across a lot of traffic can really make a difference to sales. And also there's ways to use it properly to drive traffic to your storefront, keeping in mind that 60 to 70% of people shopping on Amazon are looking at their mobile, so it's going to be really mobile friendly. But this one here, from a brand quality perspective, it is something there that if you've got a slightly higher price or more premium, you definitely want to do this. If it's something that's quite low price, where the consumer's making more of a price decision rather than wanting to, having a whole lot of questions that need answered, then you might want to question it there. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. You're going to have the biggest impact where it has the biggest. You're not going to care about a $10 product as much as you are about something that's $250. And so having A+ content on that $250,
or even $40.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, much more considered. I mean, I suppose it depends on what you're up against, right? Like a $250 and an average price point of $100 is so it's just how much more expensive are you than what else is out there is kind of the question there. The other thing I'll say with it, just from an advertising point of view, is it removes ads from your product detail page. So that's the other benefit to A+ Premium is you don't get ads from your competitors on your product pages.
Yeah, actually that's a huge aspect there, right? Less, even though we know that they are a lower intent clicks that happen there, but they do happen. So anything to keep them on there, that's a good call. In terms of what are people paying for this, anywhere from there was a bundle the other day, A+ Premium and Vine was 1.8%. Some others have been asked to pay a lump sum, like 40 grand. We've even heard 70 grand for this year. It will depend on catalog size and brand size. And I mean, it's like literally, this is the funny thing. They just need to click a box, and then it will turn on as it does for third-party sellers. But this is part of the leverage they've got, and as they are looking for more margin. So this is one here that is going to have a medium long-term positive impact. In the immediate term, it's going to not be super obvious, but it's going to compound over time. And I think just before we get on to some of the last ones there, this is really the, as you're weighing up the whole Amazon story, and a couple of episodes back, or maybe however many it was back, looking at the 2024 results and just where things are tracking with Amazon Australia, this is still early days. And the work that you do now and the investments you make now, if you make the right decisions, is going to pay off for you absolutely over the medium and long term in particular, as you just make it harder and harder for competition to get after you. And the opposite is also true. Like if you are doing enough now and getting by, despite the fact you haven't done a lot of these things, then it can be a gradual slippery slope. So medium, you might get away with it in the short term, but medium term, long term, it can start to really hurt. And there's so many stories of this happening in the USA with vendors early on that were doing it like literally over $100 million, but they kind of got lazy. They didn't make changes, and then they are no longer getting any revenue on the platform. Is that severe? And so that's kind of a little warning for not being complacent about what is happening now, and that you need to continue to invest in this platform. And at the beginning, I mentioned it's like a hybrid client. Amazon is like a hybrid customer. Yes, you've got those wholesale type retail negotiations, but then you've got the direct consumer way of thinking, and this is where you've got to bring the customer journey into it, quality content. You're thinking about advertising and how do I get more eyeballs on it, because Amazon won't do that part for you or won't do it very well. So this is where you've got to take ownership of that. Yes, it seems like an additional spend because it is, but this is going to grow your brand on the platform, which will give you more organic sales, and you'll get more and more organic. The percentage to ads and organic will grow, which is what you want. But there's also a halo effect beyond Amazon as well, as shoppers find you on the platform and will then start to search your website and will maybe make purchases from there, and they'll follow you. And like in the US, particularly around fast moving consumer goods, companies spend a fortune on Amazon, even though they're paying big amounts on clicks, because they know that this is such a huge part of their overall marketing mix that's driving sales in store and whatever those stores are. So that's almost, just shifting your thinking around Amazon, not from just being a wholesale customer, but to a hybrid D2C as well. So I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, Seb, but anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered all of it there.
Okay. Now, Luke, just looping back around to other things that Amazon is going to ask you to participate in, other programs, and particularly around, tentpole events or promotions. Like, what do you notice with those asks and some of the money being requested to participate?
Yeah, this is probably the one that that I don't like the most, and mainly because there's no attribution, which we touched on before. It's possible that these are driving a lot of awareness, but if you were to go ask Amazon, what's the overall uplift from this, and how does this work? Because obviously awareness is part of a longer term strategy. If you were to ask Amazon how that's all part of the plan, they really wouldn't be able to give you any solid strategy or advice around, the uplift from these, and then, what you're kind of going to expect down the track. And so because of that, really for us, participating in promotions, you're far better off putting that money into advertising, which you can use attribution, and you can control a lot more of when and where you show up. Option is always to put that kind of marketing budget into advertising.
Yeah.
For all of those reasons, and like the likelihood that you're maxing out, your search traffic is pretty low. Like Hamish mentioned it before, but a lot of brands underinvest in this area. So if you are looking for expansion and growth and attribution, so you can measure the real results, that's going to be the path you want to go down.
Yeah, I mean, this might sound a little bit harsh, but Amazon retail team, they're thinking about their margin. They're not thinking about attribution, and they just go, right, we'll put a banner up there and we'll say that's worth 20 grand when it's on this promotion event. But without any care in the world, will it actually make a difference and grow your sales? They just want the margin, and it costs them bugger all to do that. I might be getting a bit cynical, yes, but I'm yet to see Amazon come back with clear attribution beyond page impressions. So if you got a bit of money burning a hole in your pocket, feel free to give this a crack. But otherwise, you're far better at putting this into sponsored products, sponsored brands, and even in sponsored display, or even DSP. Like you do far better putting it into DSP than spending 30, 40 grand on participating in big events and having a brand there. Like it just doesn't work. Even on the big prime events, or probably especially on those, it doesn't work. So that's just our take.
Yeah, and they're normally by category as well, which if anyone's ever dove into the categories of Amazon, the categories can be very broad, meaning that the intent behind the customer is they're not sure what they're shopping for yet. And so to show them an ad, the intent behind it is super low. So this is why Amazon advertising is much better, because we can start to be like, well, no, if someone's searching for a size 10 red pair of running shoes, the intent behind that is very, very clear. We know that they're looking for a size 10. We know that they're looking for red. We know that they're looking for running shoes. So whereas if you were to say shoes, it's like, high heels, running shoes, like,
Yeah.
obviously shoes at that level, it's so broad. So,
Mm.
that targeted traffic is just going to be always be better for you. So until you've maxed out that and your DSP, basically what we're saying is there's no scenario where those make sense.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
yeah.
Good. Because the interesting thing here that you've also got to remember is that the retail team and the ads team don't like each other. Well, I don't know that for sure, but they definitely don't talk. And we've seen so many scenarios where retail will kind of grab all the budget and then there is no money for ads, and then sales start to decline. And so the two have their own interests at heart, and they might say different, but that's the actions speak louder than words, and that's what we see. In some cases, though, we are starting to see that I think they might be getting better, maybe, in that some companies have managed to renegotiate after some initial poor deals that they set, and they are saying, well, if you do put some ad spend behind it, then we will lower that accrual. So that's been one there. In some cases, we know it has been combined, the overall P&L, which is useful. But on the whole, you've got to realize these two teams don't talk, and they have different P&Ls, which is very strange, even though I know you've got one. So you've just got to be aware of that, because, hitting a point where you stop advertising, well, you tell me, Seb, what's the impact if you have to turn ads off? What's the story?
Yeah, so if you got in early days in Amazon, the impact will take much longer to kind of hit you from not using advertising, because you have a lot of good history. You got in early, you got the sales on the board early, and you've built all that history up, and it takes a while to erode that history. But if you get in with new products, those days are now gone, in the sense that, as in, you can still get in early from an advertising point of view, as in, so the advertising is still cheap, but to just list something organically and expect sales, those days are basically gone.
Yeah.
And so now it's about using that advertising. So any new, and people, brands know this, because they'll be like, launch a new product and they're like, well, why doesn't it do as well as, the one that we launched 5 years ago? And it's like, well, the reason is because that one's 5 years old and it's got all of that history and built up. So so new products, they're going to need that support much more than what you've seen historically. They're going to need Vine to get the reviews. They're going to need advertising and all of that to build them up.
And if you have got a mature product, established product, if you turn off ads, it will stay in the top ranking for a while, but then it will start to decline, and then the competition will start to take over. So that's just the reality of it. So it is something you want to try and avoid, is where I'm getting to with this. Is if you've got ads on, you want to keep them on and actually learn how to invest ads appropriately with a TACOS measure, so that you can continue to scale as your sales grow. One other thing I just want to quickly loop around before we wrap things up, Seb, is, we talk about treating Amazon as that you've got the wholesale relationship there, where you've got to go, here's our price to buy our products. Given all these accruals that are there, like as a rule of thumb, add 25% to what allow 25% of your pricing for Amazon accruals. Like, even to give yourself a bit of a buffer for the other things that can go on. And this is even before we get to chargebacks, which we don't have yet, but could come. So give yourself a bit of a buffer, at least 25% into your pricing, to allow for all those accruals over and above what you'd be happy to receive for your wholesale. So just to protect your margins there, because that was the kind of the overall theme, and your price that you sell to Amazon at is one of the most important things. So keep that in mind for any new products, or if you are looking to negotiate a price increase, then you keep that in mind as well. Amazon doesn't like price increases, but if you know your net PPM by SKU, you can then you can negotiate well. Because this is the thing, right, Seb? Amazon has a very good negotiating method. They are very skilled at this, ruthless in many ways. And if you don't come into dealing with Amazon with the right mindset, and that includes, we are going to have a process here, we're going to know what's important to us, we're going to be organized, we know what our target is, we're going to have our method as well, then you will get chewed up and spat out pretty much. It could go really bad for you. So, what would you say to that, just as a finishing?
Yeah, Amazon have done this, many, many times in many different countries across the world. And so they know, like, they do have a playbook. They do know how to do this, and they know how to get the most out of brands. And so, yeah, I think what we're saying is come in with being educated on knowing how they're going to approach it, and have a bit of a plan on, okay, this is the direction that we're going to go in. So, and that's going to yield dividends for you. It could be the number one thing that you could do to improve your overall margins across your whole brand, and it's that negotiation piece at the start.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I remember quite a few years ago, I did this negotiation training. It was actually pretty cool. It was like an in-person three-day event, and one of the things was around an elk steak. It was like if you had all these wolves chasing you, and if you just throw them a bit of elk, that you just caught, hanging on the back, they're chasing you because you got the elk. If you chuck them a steak, they're not going to eat that and go, oh, we're happy with that. No, they're going to eat that, and then they're going to run after you for the next one. So, like it's and the message was like, if you're going to give something, you got to get something back in return. So so you never just accept anything without getting something in exchange. Anyway, that was 3 days worth of negotiation training in 10 seconds. Anyway, so look, we'll wrap it up there. And look, and if you did want to have a conversation, probably with myself or even Annika, who's our head of client delivery, about your Amazon terms, then please feel free to reach out. If you go to gosellglobal.com and book a call there, we'll be happy to help. So otherwise, next session, we will be probably more back on the advertising theme, but coming up as well, by the time you listen to this, we will be at Retail Fest in the Gold Coast next week, where there's going to be an amazing event. There'll be 1,500 plus people there and some of the best speakers in the e-commerce space. Looking forward to that and hearing what's going on. And also Seb, myself and Victoria from our team, we're running a workshop on the Wednesday, the 28th morning. So we've got time there, like a proper 3 hours there to really dive deep into a lot of things around Amazon ads and around content, and also some hot seats, you could say, for reviewing people there. So if you're there, we'd love to see you. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining us today, and please like and subscribe and all those good things. But all the best. Thanks, Seb.
Thanks, team. Bye.
Okay, bye for now.